All right, welcome to Young Turks. Cenk, Uygur, David Shuster with you guys. Going to be a fantastic show. Good to see you, David. I'm not the only one excited.
Good to be on with you, Cenk.
Yep, I'm not the only one excited about seeing you. Apparently some Trump female fans are excited about seeing you. That video later in the program, that's nothing short of hilarious. Also, good news, I figured out what motivates Trump fans, what they're all about. So that secret revealed later in the program after all these years. And then much later in the program, but a super fun story, Jordan Peterson cries again while defending incels. So this should be a doozy of a show. All right, David, let's get started. What do you got for us?
Cenk, in Southwest Florida, the rains have finally stopped and the floodwaters are beginning to recede. And the resulting pictures and images of the devastation from Hurricane Ian are truly heart-wrenching. The Washington Post obtained some drone video. We're gonna show it to you now. And the drone video was taken a few hours ago above Port Charlotte, Florida. Port Charlotte is just north of Fort Myers. It's near where the eye of Hurricane Ian roared ashore. Port Charlotte had a population of 50,000 people. Thousands of homes, though, have been destroyed. Thousands of others will likely be unlivable following floodwaters several feet high. Here is the headline from the Miami Herald: Ian's path of ruin. Sanibel Bridge severed, Gulf Coast cities flooded, rescues continue. The Washington Post headline reads, historic damage as millions lose power. Death toll remains unclear as Florida Governor DeSantis describes flooding as one in 500-year event. In the body of the story, the Post reports, quote, Ian battered parts of Florida's western coast, tearing down trees and power lines and causing dangerous storm surges in parts of the state. Authorities in Fort Myers, which was badly hit, said late Wednesday that parts of the city were under 3 to 4 feet of water. To the south of Naples, half of the streets are not passable due to high water, Collier County warned in a tweet. Utility companies say that more than 2.6 million people in Florida are now without electricity. And while state authorities have not yet released a death toll, some of the public officials are warning that the number of people killed in the storm is expected to be in the hundreds. The storm is moving north, and again, as the Washington Post reported, it is projected to bring potentially life-threatening floods, storm surge, and winds to parts of Florida, Georgia, and North and South Carolina as it makes its way towards northeastern Florida and then approaches the South Carolina coast on Friday. The governors of Virginia, Georgia, North Carolina, and South Carolina have declared states of emergency ahead of Ian's expected shift in their direction. In Fort Myers, Florida, and nearby areas, rescues are underway, as we pointed out, and several buildings, Cenk, have apparently been cut off, apparently including a local jail. According to Lee County Sheriff's Office spokesperson Anita Erart, the Sheriff's Office declined to evacuate inmates from its 457-bed downtown Fort Myers jail as Hurricane Ian neared Category 5 status and closed in on the area. Lee County's own map indicates that the jail is in a mandatory evacuation zone. In advance of the storm's arrival, the National Hurricane Forecast suggested that downtown Fort Myers would face the threat of a storm surge of 9 feet or more. In an update, though, the Lee County Sheriff's has released a statement claiming that the inmates at this particular downtown jail are safe. Quote, in abundance of caution, inmates were relocated within the main jail to a higher floor. Hurricane Ian hit Florida, of course, after hitting the Caribbean, parts of Puerto Rico and Cuba. And coverage of the storm on Fox News has revealed a stunning, incredible amount of ignorance that one of their main news anchors has about the Caribbean. Martha McCallum was talking about the impact of Hurricane Ian on some of the islands in the Caribbean. You will not see her face here, but listen to what she said as she's covered by video.
You feel terrible for people in Puerto Rico who were just hit and Cuba who were just hit. Thank God we have better infrastructure in our country. We've put a lot of investment into making sure that we're ready for these things, but it's an act of nature.
And that, of course, is an act of stupidity. Our country, well, Puerto Rico has been part of our country as a US territory for more than 130 years. Cenk, your thoughts?
Yeah, so first on the McCollum and Sheriff stories. So first, a lot of Americans don't know that Puerto Rico is part of America, and that's because our government treats them that way. And so when Florida gets hit, everyone's like, oh my God, Florida, what's going on? Oh my heart goes out. Puerto Rico gets hit, it's an afterthought. And by the way, now that Florida got hit, nobody's even talking or thinking about Puerto Rico. And the infrastructure in Florida is better. That's because we don't spend money in Puerto Rico, even though it's a US territory, because of people like Martha McCollum. The sheriff saying that out of an abundance of caution, we've moved folks to the second floor. That's not really an abundance of caution. An abundance of caution would have been moving them out for sure, and you're supposed to have a plan to do that under normal circumstances. What if it was a fire? Out of an abundance of caution, we moved them to the second floor where the fire also raged. Okay, so, but the main story here, of course, is about the hurricane overall. As David just told you, 500-year storm, DeSantis says. Unless 500 years just turned into 4 years, I think his math is questionable. There was a hurricane just as strong that hit Florida in 2018. And then there was the 500 or the 1,000-year storm that hit Houston a couple of years back. I think that the war on math for Republicans have begun. And of course, the whole point there is they're trying to pretend that this is just extraordinary and is not happening on a regular basis, when of course it is. So it's super important to be clear here, especially with some Republicans in the audience, because they're easily duped. So hurricanes that happen like this one are a weather event, okay? Climate is overall, right? Or the patterns that we see, the cooling and the heating of the air, the oceans, etc., right? So you can't attribute any one weather event specifically necessarily to climate and the changes in the climate. But if you see the severity of the storms picking up, the severity of the droughts, the fires, etc., as scientists have correctly predicted now for decades, that is climate change. So if you see just one dot like this hurricane and you say, well, okay, Cenk, that's not fair, that's just a weather event, which is what every Republican online is saying now, just weather, weather, right? But if you see a pattern of dots and that shows you a line like this going through the roof, that is what scientists predicted. That is the climate change that they're talking about. Because the climate change doesn't create storms or hurricanes, it intensifies them, right? So I think that that's part of what we're seeing here. And then, David, to the political hypocrisy, DeSantis, of course, will say, oh my God, I can't believe this, we've got to recover here, et cetera, et cetera. And then he'll turn around and take fossil fuel money the next day and say that climate change doesn't exist. But an even more stark hypocrisy is, as he is praising gigantic government handouts to Florida today, he'll turn around tomorrow and say, I can't believe the government does handouts.
Cenk, is there also a political implication, though, just in terms of how the storm is handled, say, over the next couple of weeks? And I hearken back to, you and I both remember Hurricane Katrina from 2005 and the political damage. I mean, at first, everybody was like, yes, rally around trying to rebuild and help everybody in New Orleans. But within a couple of days, when there was George W. Bush flying over and saying, heck of a job, Brownie, I mean, there was a clear political impact as a major US city essentially drowned. If in fact the damage is catastrophic in the western part of Florida, and there are hundreds of deaths, and aid doesn't get immediately in there, and electricity doesn't get turned on for a while, does that have a drag on DeSantis? And could it possibly, I suppose, maybe even put a drag on some Democrats and change a little bit of the focus for the 2022 midterms and possibly hurt Joe Biden?
Yeah, no, I don't think so. And so I'll tell you why. I think that we live in a post-truth world now. Hurricane was still in the truth world. And so all of the media agreed that Hurricane Katrina was handled poorly. So the whole country agreed that Hurricane Katrina was handled poorly, because it was. Now, if a hurricane is handled poorly, well, we saw it in Texas, when they had the lines freeze in the winter and people froze to death. The Republicans just said, oh, that's because of solar energy. Solar energy isn't being used there. They privatized the energy industry there, and that private company cut costs and let people freeze to death and just made the government pay the costs. But Fox News and everybody else went out there and said, no, it's not the facts that you see. It's these other lies we're gonna tell you about how solar did it and wind did it. Just totally made up. And 40% of the country instantly believed them. So since we live in that post-truth world now, No, all Tucker Carlson and the other guys have to do is come out and say hurricanes are good. You know what? Goddamn Dr. Fauci created the hurricane, and you could have fixed this hurricane with ivermectin, but the liberals didn't take the ivermectin. And so no, nothing has any political impact at all anymore, other than, yes, the critical small slice of independence left in the country, and that's our battlefield.
Yeah, and I think I'm with you, and it's a sort of a sad state of affairs because you'd like to think that our political leaders, particularly in times of an emergency, if they handle it well, they should be rewarded. If they handle it poorly, they should be held accountable for that. But we'll see how things play out over the next couple of weeks.
Actually, David, one more thing.
Let's move on.
Sorry, David, one more thing on that. I mean, you see DeSantis actually trying hard to handle this correctly, right? So he's telling, hey, don't criticize Biden, let's get the money in. And he seems like he's very active. I'm being fair, you see that? Like I thought Abbott did a miserable job in Texas, but DeSantis looks like he's at least trying hard, right? I'm kind of surprised by it. Because remember, he didn't mind killing his own citizens at all during coronavirus. He bragged about it. Oh, we're not gonna take precautions. Florida's gonna be the dumbest state, ha ha. And then you saw numbers spike. And way more people died because he refused to protect his own citizens. I guess the hurricane is visible and a virus is not visible. So maybe that makes a difference, but there's some percentage chance, David, at some point Republican governors just go, it doesn't matter how visible it is. Like a post-truth world, we'll just blame it on Bill Gates. And by the way, Alex Jones is already there. He says the government creates weather and it creates these storms, etc. When Alex Jones is there, Tucker Carlson's next, and DeSantis is right after. So this might be the last hurricane that they even bother responding to. The rest, they'll just say it didn't exist, or Fauci created it, or you could solve it with, suntanning your crotch. That's a literal remedy they have.
Tucker Carlson in a famous Fox News documentary. Let's move on. Yeah. Let's talk about presidential politics. Democrats who are looking at the 2024 presidential campaign have not gotten a very good boost of confidence in terms of cognitive abilities of both Joe Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris over the past couple of days. First, Vice President Harris. On this day, she was traveling along the demilitarized zone between North and South Korea. She stepped in front of a microphone and a podium, which was in front of a military helicopter, and she said this, watch.
So the United States shares a very important relationship, which is an alliance with the Republic of North Korea. And it is an alliance that is strong and enduring.
Actually, as anybody with any sort of basic understanding of US foreign policy understands, North Korea is an adversary of the United States. South Korea is the ally of the United States. Harris was visiting the DMZ just days after North Korea launched a couple of ballistic missiles into the East Sea. The vice president's flub followed just by one day a gaffe by President Biden at the White House. President Biden was speaking at a bipartisan White House conference on hunger, nutrition, and health. Watch.
And I want to thank all of you here for including bipartisan elected officials like Representative Governor, Senator Braun, Senator Booker, Representative Jackie. Are you here? Where's Jackie? I didn't think she was going to be here.
Now that was a reference, an unfortunate reference to Indiana Republican Congresswoman Jackie Walorski. She died in August in a car crash in Indiana. At a White House news briefing, ABC News reporter Cecilia Vega asked Biden spokesperson Karine Jean-Pierre about the president's mistake.
What happened in the hunger event today? The president appeared to look around the room for an audience member, a member of Congress who passed away last month. He seemed to indicate she might be in the room. What happened there? So the president was, as you all know, you guys were watching today's event, a very important event on food insecurity. The president was naming the congressional champions on this issue and was acknowledging her incredible work. He had already planned to welcome the Congresswoman's family to the White House on Friday. There will be a bill signing in her honor this coming Friday. So, of course, she was on his mind. She was of top of mind for the president.
One reporter noted that John Lennon was on the top of his mind each day, but that did not mean the reporter was looking around for John Lennon in the room. Well, the White House spokesperson dismissed the criticism, of course, and the criticism of Joe Biden here was also dismissed sort of by a member of the late Congresswoman's family. Keith Walorski, according to the New York Post, one of the deceased lawmaker's two brothers, is preparing to visit the White House on Friday with his mother and one of his sister's close friends. It's par for the course, Walorski told the Post, of Biden's bizarre gaffe. I feel sorry for him, really. He made a phone call after my sister was killed, and he was very sincere in his relaying the grief process because he's been through that grief process. He knows all about it. Keith Walorski added, all I'm saying right now about the president is bless his heart for trying. Yeah, it was a big mess up today. Inexcusable? No. Unforgivable? No. I'm not gonna hold it against him. I just feel sorry for him. Cenk, my view is that Joe Biden, even if he doesn't know what planet he's on, is preferable to most people, most Democrats, certainly most people in this country, over a Donald Trump who has it totally together in his own mind. However, I can understand the nervousness that a lot of Democrats start to have, and they have had every time Joe Biden makes one of these gaffes. And it certainly doesn't help when Kamala Harris, who might be the heir apparent, is also sort of underscoring her lack of foreign policy experience.
I think those two slip-ups are completely different. I think Kamala Harris just misspoke. I don't think it's a big deal at all. And mind you, if you don't watch the Young Turks regularly, I am not a fan of Kamala Harris. But you got to be fair to everybody. I don't think that is an indication of anything. And if you're a Republican criticizing her, please, okay, that's hilarious because Donald Trump doesn't say it as a slip-up. He says it for real. He says all the time. He just said it to Sean Hannity in an interview a couple of days ago that he loves Kim Jong-un, the communist dictator of North Korea, not South Korea, North Korea. And he says they had love letters. He calls them love letters. He says, quote, we fell in love. So he means it. So there's no Republican who's allowed to say one word about that slip up because your dear leader actually loves that dictator. Literally. And I'm not the one who said it. Trump did. You could look it up. You could see him on tape saying it. I know nothing will convince you. That's Biden, not Trump. Okay, so that's the Republicans. That's Kamala Harris. Biden, on the other hand, in the beginning, David, I was going to just dismiss it because, look, I follow politics pretty religiously, and honestly, I didn't hear about that car crash, and I feel bad for her and her family and all of that, of course. But was it like just a giant event, like the hurricane in Florida, and Biden forgot it? No, it was a small event. That's what I was going to say when I saw the headlines. But then I read into the story, and it turns out, as you pointed out there, he already called the family. So forgetting after you call the family, that's a little bit different and it's a little bit tougher, okay? See, we're honest here. But at the same time, I think that the White House screwed it up by trying to deflect when all you gotta say is he forgot. I don't think it's that big a deal that he forgot. I forget things. And yeah, that's a tough one to forget since you made the call, right? But it's not the end of the world if he forgot. Look, guys, do I think that Biden is perfectly mentally sharp? No, I haven't thought that for a long time, and I've said it. We're honest about it. At the same time, Donald Trump's a blithering moron who was never sharp to begin with and is now just falling apart at the seams. So now, if you say, hey, why don't we get something other than those two? I say, yes, please, I agree. And you know why all the politicians are old, right? Because the donors want return on investment and they want safe investments. And the older politicians have shown that they have sold out their whole lives. So that's why they're safer investments. They know Biden's gonna deliver for them, McConnell's gonna deliver for them, et cetera, both Republicans and Democrats. So that's why we have politicians falling apart on television because the donors like prop them up, wheel them out, who cares? Nothing's gonna fundamentally change. That's the only thing we care about. So, that's why I think those two things are very different. What do you think, David?
Well, a couple of things. I mean, to your point about Joe Biden having called, the family before, from what I understand, I mean, this president particularly likes to, I don't think he likes it, but because he's got such experience with grief and mourning, he's very good at showing empathy and sympathy to people who have lost loved ones. And so from what I've heard, President Biden calls families of people who have lost loved ones, whether it's in politics or media or governors or Secret Service. He makes these calls all the time. So I can sort of understand if he's made 500 of these calls over the last 6 months, sure, they start to sort of all perhaps sort of blend in. The other part about it is I'm sure he was told, oh, by the way, this is an event where here are the following members of Congress who are actively looking at poverty and these issues on a bipartisan basis. And maybe they didn't quite explain to him when they said, oh, and this congresswoman's family is going to be here Friday. Maybe he didn't either hear them say, you remember the congresswoman who died last month, or he just wasn't paying attention. And he just, in the moment, while he's going around trying to sort of ad lib and thank people, is Jackie here? And so I think it's sort of forgivable and it shouldn't have been that big a deal. But I also agree that, if the White House had just said, look, none of us are perfect. The vice president has made hundreds of these phone calls and he just got one confused. He got her mixed up with somebody else. Cut us some slack. That would be a more genuine response, I think, than, oh, she was at the top of his mind.
Yeah, for example, David just accidentally called Biden the vice president. Does that mean that David has dementia? No, he just slipped up for a second.
I do have dementia. I will confess to that.
So, and by the way, we're off prompter and Biden's off prompter. And so in that moment, can you slip up? Of course. It's just a matter of whether there's a pattern. With Biden, there is a little bit of a pattern. Let's be honest about it. With Trump, there's a massive pattern. The guy took a dementia test, didn't even realize it was a dementia test. And you should fail on that alone. He's like, oh, I have the highest IQ, man, woman, camera, TV. It's a dementia test, you moron. Anyway, one last thing. Look, I'm gonna be a total jerk here. But he's searching for Jackie to give her credit. Yeah. She passed away, so it's not about her, but she's a Republican. And that's classic Biden. Where's the Republican? I want to give a bear hug to a Republican. I love Republicans. I want to give all the credit to the Republicans. Where are they? Oh, God damn it, they died. Okay, I want to give credit to them anyway. Just for God's sake, stop giving credit to the guys you're calling semi-fascist.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, I just wish, it would have been nicer to me. I would have Biden rather taken some hits from Republicans for not including any Republicans on this event and just having a purely Democratic members of Congress. They're the only ones who are helping him on this legislation. So he sort of angers the Democrats by reaching across the aisle and pretending that everybody sort of gets along. And then, of course, when he's reaching out to a Republican and he sort of underscores that maybe he's not all there all the time, which I think gives heartache to a lot of Democratic donors and activists who are looking up at 2024 and thinking, God, I wish it was somebody else. Not just, of course, Biden. Of course, we certainly hope that Donald Trump wouldn't run, but that was just somebody else on both sides.
Absolutely. All right, we got to take a quick break here. When we come back, among the stories we have is, what percentage of Americans think that if you lose an election, you should resort to violence? It's a real number, and it's a pretty big number. All right, we'll come back. Back on TYT, Cenk, David, and Adolfo Morales with you guys. Oh no, Adolfo just wrote best intro of all time. Oh, thank you, brother. I appreciate it. He's a YouTube member. You can be a YouTube member too by hitting the join button below the video if you're watching on YouTube. Everybody else, tyt.com/join. All right, David, what's next?
Donald Trump continues to have rallies, of course, just about every other week. And Trump supporters this past weekend in Wilmington, North Carolina, well, their blind faith in the former president was on full display. Many of the MAGA supporters insisted to us, and under questioning, that Donald Trump is the greatest president in US history. And they were serious. Watch.
I adore Trump and I don't care what you think.
Where does he rank in terms of other presidents?
He's number one.
Ahead of Franklin Roosevelt, who won World War II, ahead of Abe Lincoln, who won the Civil War and freed the slaves.
Number one.
He ranks up on the top. Right now, he's number one.
I think he was the best, and I think Biden is the worst.
Now, they said all of this, even though when I would mention what Abraham Lincoln had done, what George Washington had done, what John F. Kennedy had done, what Franklin Roosevelt had done. They don't care. In their view, regardless of their knowledge, lack of knowledge about history, they say, one person said, we are in a different kind of war. All that stuff that Abraham Lincoln did, that was great, but we are in a different kind of war. That's a more important war that Donald Trump is leading us in now. And for that reason, Cenk, they say he's number one. What do you make of it?
Look, I have a conclusion on Trump voters that's now definitive. And it is your interviews with them, which everybody should check out at Rebel Headquarters. They're amazing, okay? David interviewed them on a great number of topics. You guys, it's fascinating. But it was the straw that broke the camel's back for me. I'm gonna come back to that in a second. But one of the amazing details in those videos, David, was when the person told you, like, no, Trump's number one because none other presidents had to deal with a divided country like this and all those slings and arrows against Trump, poor guy. Lincoln was shot. So I'm pretty sure he had to deal with slings, arrows, and actually bullets. And a divided country, it was a civil war. We were literally killing each other in a war dug in with trenches and cannons. So, I mean, they're amazing, they're amazing. Which goes to my point, David. I realized no, there's no convincing them. None. No, I know we've talked about it before, but I realized watching your interviews, they have different. Whatever Trump says, even if it contradicts one another, it actually helps because one of them picks one excuse, the other one picks the other excuse, the third one picks a third excuse. None of them match. They don't care. And so it's not hyperbole. I don't get the sense, and I'm curious because you've talked to a lot of them. I don't get the sense that they care at all what reality is. They just have a feeling. They feel that Donald Trump is one of them and they love him for protecting them in their minds. And they don't care if he robs them. They don't care if he stole documents. They don't care about any of it. They're finding a convenient excuse to excuse whatever action he did because he's one of them. It's 100% about their feelings, and I think they are incapable of being convinced.
I think you're absolutely right. And one of the things that struck me is a lot of people, when I go to these rallies, they say, oh, be careful. I mean, it's dangerous. And the fact of the matter is 90% of the people who believe this stuff, they're actually very friendly and polite and smile because they think that they're in on the secret and we're the ones who don't know what we're talking about. That, oh, you guys don't know the research about gematria and all this God's language and QAnon and all this sort of crazy stuff they spout. And they're so happy that they know it and we don't, and that they're in on the explanation for a very confusing world. It becomes less confusing with this crazy stuff that they believe. And as a result, it's very easy for them to say, even in the same interview, well, the reason that I don't like immigrants is because they violated the law. And then 2 sentences later, you ask about the documents. Oh no, there was no law broken in taking classified documents. And that takes us to another part of this story, Cenk, in that there's sort of a contrast between what's going on with some of these supporters and what Donald Trump is saying to them, and also what his lawyers are saying. And what's happening in the classified investigation is that the Trump defense, again, is a little bit different now than what is being said publicly. And it all seems, at least in terms of the documents, which is something that we asked about, we'll bring that up in a second. The lawyers seem to be engaged right now in this effort to try to to slow things down, to create some sort of effort to delay the investigation. In their latest filing to the special master judge Raymond Geary, the Trump attorneys have said they cannot find a vendor to scan all of the documents in time. And the reason is because the 11,000 documents contained a lot more pages than they were expecting. Quote, when plaintiff's counsel referred to either 11,000 pages or even 11,000 documents during the status conference, we were still waiting the transcript, the government chose not to interject with an accurate number. In conversations between plaintiff's counsel and the government regarding a data vendor, the government mentioned that the 11,000 documents contain closer to 200,000 pages. The estimated volume, with a need to operate under the accepted time frame supported by the government, is the reason why so many of the government selected vendors have declined the potential engagement. This is a filing by the Trump lawyers. Consequently, the plaintiff respectfully suggests that Your Honor and the parties will best be served by having the retained vendor convey a supportable time frame for scanning roughly 200,000 pages into a platform and also provide a breakdown of rollout quantities and proposed deadlines. But is it conceivable that there were really some 200,000 pages of material that is bolstering Donald Trump's argument that everything needs to be slowed down? Well, the size of a standard sheet, 8.5 by 11. There's 500 sheets fresh off the production line when you talk about something that's 2 inches deep. In the famous photo of the documents right on the floor of Mar-a-Lago, you can see a banker's box containing frame photos of Time magazine covers. A banker's box is about 10 inches by 12 inches by 15 inches. It can hold about 10 reams of paper, meaning that if all of the material seized from Mar-a-Lago were compressed into ream-sized bundles, it would take 40 bankers' boxes to hold 200,000 pages, and the FBI removed only 27 boxes. So here again, an effort perhaps by the Trump legal team to throw all kinds of crazy stuff that may not even be true against the wall to see what will stick in terms of delaying the proceedings and slowing things down. But as for the Trump supporters, when you ask them about Donald Trump taking classified documents and the declassification process, the responses are all over the map. There is no coherence to any of them. And some of them are just downright crazy, but they're connected by the belief from these Trump supporters that Donald Trump can do no wrong. Watch.
And he didn't pack that up. Other people packed it up. He didn't pack it up.
But did he declassify it?
He said he declassified all of it.
By thinking about it.
I don't know about that.
What are we talking about here? Why is something being made more of a narrative that has to have a negative and he did something wrong? Because at the end of the day, it was nothing but a trap and they fell for it. Ha!
Who's they?
The FBI, dear.
Does he have to sign something or tell people he's declassifying something?
Is this like left-wing news?
Why would Donald Trump, though, want to take these documents to Mar-a-Lago?
Well, I mean, why not? There are no actual rule. I mean, there's guidelines, but there's no hard rules. He has the ability to declassify whatever he wants.
He said the other night, just by thinking about it, that he can declassify.
I believe that could be the case.
Think about it. And people said, yeah, that's fine. Donald Trump can declassify anything he wants, however he wants. And then when we would ask about, well, what about, you talk about the importance of the law. What about the lawsuit that Donald Trump is a businessman? We had a number of people say, I like Donald Trump because he was outside the political establishment. He was a successful businessman. We follow up and say, okay, well, as a businessman, he's now being sued by the New York Attorney General for overinflating assets to the tune of getting loans for more than $250 million. I mean, one guy who said, well, that's fine, that's okay. And I said, well, tell me the name of your bank. And he proceeded to tell us the name of his bank in Indiana. And I said, let's suppose that I want to get a loan from your bank and I've got $100,000 of assets, but I tell them I've got $10 million in assets. That's how much I want in terms of a loan. Would you be okay with your bank giving me their credit, their money, because I make up a bunch of nonsense? And he says, everybody does it. And that's how they justify this, Cenk.
Yeah, well, actually, that last one is more honest than a lot of them. Because I think that the right-wing mind thinks, yeah, I'm allowed to do it. I just don't want you to do it. And I don't think that they think that that's hypocrisy. And I'm not sure they consciously think it through, but their actions and everything they say, it's always, oh, no, it's okay when Trump does it, it's okay when we do it, it's okay when Steve Bannon, Roger Stone, Tucker Carlson, whoever it is does it. Or when you do it, you're a goddamn criminal. Because it's just about, and we talked about this in the context of America too, it's just they think differently than us. We think America is a democracy and we love that it's got a constitution, and a constitution that protects rights of the majority and the minority, etc. And it's balanced. No, they think of America as me, I'm America. And all the people I know, white right-wingers, Christians, we're America. Everyone who doesn't look like us is not America. I don't know what you're talking about, this gobbledygook about rights. So in this particular case, I counted at least 5 different excuses they gave you in that one video. There's the longer video is on Rebel headquarters. And so and then I realized, as I was telling you earlier, David, Trump throwing out like things against the wall, right? We look at it and we laugh. We go, that's so funny. How could he say that he didn't have the documents, but he had kept them in better, cleaner shape when they showed the picture of all the documents on the floor? Well, that means you did have the documents. No, for his audience, they think or a certain percentage think, good, he didn't have the documents. Another percentage think, see, he kept them in better shape. See, the FBI planted them. See, he never had them. He's just giving them whatever's going to make them feel good about whichever excuse they like better. They don't care about the hypocrisy. It's a post-truth world. It's when you see David's interviews, it's amazing to watch because you see it live in action. And David, I agree with you. When you talk to real people in the real world, right-wingers, I talk to them all the time. I travel across the country. They're not demonic. They're not evil. They're not like, oh, I'm gonna attack you or whatever. No, and they're largely good to their own family, their community, et cetera, et cetera. But they just have an us versus them mentality. And I have seen people's, and even in the real world though, when they realize that I'm not Bob Smith, I'm Cenk Uygur, as they would say, a name that's not pronounceable. If I tell him I'm Muslim, et cetera, you see a little bit of recoiling like, oh, he's not one of us. Not from everybody, but from some folks, right? I remember talking to a guy from Indiana. It's a funny coincidence, on a plane, and I said, oh, I'm an atheist. He said, oh, God damn it. And we were having such a good time, right? And he's like, oh, that's a damn shame. I said, well, I used to be Muslim. He's like, well, okay, at least that turned out, you wound up going in a better direction. Okay, I just gave him a Southern accent. He didn't have a Southern accent. Okay, anyway. And then back to the actual legal trouble that Trump is in the real world. 200,000 pages of documents. What a hilarious excuse, right? They're like, oh, it's gonna take forever to sort out all these things that he stole. Well, you guys are the ones who wanted the special master, who wanted these extra legal proceedings. And you guys are the ones who said, oh, he didn't take much, he didn't take anything. I don't know what you're talking about. Now you're like, oh, he took so much. It's gonna take forever to sort through, right? And David, one other important factor here, and this is the first time this has happened. Trump hired a lawyer, an actual lawyer, Christopher Kise, and he's a deep Republican, represented DeSantis before, et cetera, but he's a professional. He's an actual lawyer, right? Unlike like Bob off the street and Sally that just got out of the asylum that Trump is hiring for his lawyers now. But he wouldn't do it unless Trump gave him $3 million in advance. And so since Trump desperately needed an actual lawyer, he did it. He gave the guy $3 million. He's not in the case anymore, just a month later. Now, nobody knows why, and as a lawyer, you're not allowed to say, but I guarantee you this. Trump told him to lie, like he tells every lawyer to lie. The guy's like, no, I'm not gonna lie for you. Because remember, as a client, I know, even for the criminals, you're supposed to talk in ways where you say, oh, well, if it were to be this case scenario, would that be more helpful to my case, right? But Trump probably told him, yeah, of course I took it, I stole it, you sold it to this guy and that guy, now go say that it was Biden who did it. What? No, I can't do that, I'll be disbarred, right? So I don't know the actual conversation that I had, but I know that the guy he paid $3 million to, the only real attorney he has, did not show up for those proceedings and his name was not on the documents. He's not on the case anymore, and that's amazing.
One other thing that I have found amazing, Cenk, and that you've been sending me out there now for a year, and there's certainly, I have at least detected, and this is anecdotal, a bit of a change in that a year ago, the people who would wear the shirts that say F and spell it out Biden, I mean, they would wear shirts that say, let's go Brandon. They were sort of ashamed, or they didn't want to be caught on camera using the F word. And the people who believed in QAnon, they didn't want to give interviews, and they didn't want to talk about it. Now, the number of people who are willing to wear the F Biden t-shirts, far more abrasive than just let's go Brandon. The number of people who are willing to talk about QAnon and they, drinking blood out of children's heads that they say, the elitist cabal is doing to make drugs. It's a stark number of people who are now willing to talk openly about it. It's as if this is getting a sort of scarier and they're getting more willing to say this stuff. And I don't know if it's a function of just, well, a number of people have left Trump and the people who are remaining are the real hardcore crazy ones. Or whether it's just they're more and more comfortable with each passing week, with each passing month to say this stuff out loud.
Yeah, and David, I'll end on that. So look, it's become a self-affirming circle here within the MAGA world. And it's not a small number. They're not a minority of the Republicans. They are clearly a majority of the Republicans. So if you care about just the politics of this so that we don't lose the country to fascists that don't believe in democracy, et cetera, it's super important for Democratic politicians to understand, although it'll take them decades to understand, and by that time, I'm worried it'll be too late. Look, in politics, in the old days, you try to reach everyone, right? Especially Democrats. Oh, we're gonna get the Republicans in the suburbs. You ain't gonna get them, okay? So it's super important with your limited resources and limited bandwidth to focus on the things that'll actually win you elections. You must turn out your base. That's why Republicans win. They turn out their base fantastically. They're murdering children. They're snapping their necks and drinking their brain juice. People are, God damn it, we gotta save the children. They turn out. We can actually turn out our base for things that are actually true. But of course, the Democratic Party never does that. And yes, independents can still be convinced, and you should focus on them. But spending 1 minute trying to convince MAGA chudheads that Trump did something wrong is a complete and utter waste of time. They're never, ever going to be convinced. Constantly saying, oh, Trump's a bad guy, Trump's a bad guy, has literally zero effect on them. So move on already. And David, and maybe this is the most important part. In the long run, the only way to penetrate what is about, and by the way, it's true in every country, about 25 to 30% of every country has folks who just don't care about truth at all. Whatever a religious leader or an authoritarian leader says, yes, I don't want to hear any stinking facts. The only way that you could ever penetrate that group is by delivering actual results for them. Because one of the women that you talked to said, well, maybe JFK is number one, right? And so, and I've told the story before, I know some Republicans, some older school Republicans, and they still love FDR and they still love JFK. Why? They said, well, I mean, FDR gave me Social Security. And they think JFK gave them Medicare, but it was actually Lyndon Johnson. So when you deliver for them, that stays for decades. Anything else, just calling Trump a bad guy, is just never going to work.
I agree. I mean, my experience was these people would not give an inch. There was one person out of the 30 on-camera interviews who said, look, some of Donald Trump's personality I don't like, but I like his policies. And I'd say, oh, what about his personality? Oh, I don't want to talk about it. But at least it would acknowledge there were certain things about the Donald Trump's personality that Donald Trump was, would occasionally lie. But for the most part, most of these people, they will not give a single inch on anything related to Donald Trump.
Yeah, no, because they don't view him as a political figure. They view him as a prophet.
Yes.
Okay, all right, we got to take a break. When we come back, a surprising twist in MAGA world where a couple of them hit on David. Fascinating. David, don't I take offense at me being overly surprised. We'll do that when we return. All right, back on TYT. Cenk and David with you guys. David, take it away.
Trump is the first guy that was a businessman. He was not a politician. Right?
And he's getting a lawsuit against him.
Oh, whatever. I love this guy. Oh my God, he is so cute.
Who was she talking about? Oh, apparently she was talking about me. That was a woman who was clearly under the influence of something. She was a bit tipsy and she was getting a little bit too friendly as we were trying to ask her about Donald Trump and Ron DeSantis. And her friendliness did not stop there. Watch this.
Donald Trump does not run.
But if he's in the background, I support it.
All right, so if it's somebody that Donald Trump supports, so you'll vote for them.
Right. What do you think? What do you think?
Okay, hello everybody.
Hello.
Hello.
We
Can I interview your friend
Facebook. Now? We're on Facebook.
Hello, Facebook. Nice to be on your Facebook. What's your name again? It's
Rose.
Rose. So Rose, what are you looking for today?
I am looking to support the Patriots. I don't know, Patriots.
God, the hog.
I love you, dude. What's your name?
I'm David.
David.
Yeah.
Now, I will confess, Cenk, that in that split second when she was asking me my name, I thought, okay, I've got two options here. I can give her my real name, or I could give her a fake name. And I was thinking I was this close to saying, my name is Cenk Uygur, and giving her your email so that you could get an email from somebody saying, hey, it was great seeing you this afternoon. How about we get together after the Trump rally? How would that have gone? Would that have violated any internal policies here?
No, giving my email to people who think you're cute does not violate a policy. Okay, it also doesn't get anything done, but but it doesn't violate a policy. So look, that's just fun. And in fact, as you're doing all these interviews, and they're all on Rebel headquarters, and they're amazing, and they're giving you crazy answers. And there's a guy dressed as a pirate, and they give 5 different reasons why Trump should have stolen the documents, etc. It was just kind of like a nice moment to have these women not hate you, right? Because no, I'm serious. Like, you know what I'm saying? Did you get a sense? Like, did you feel the same thing or no?
Yeah, I mean, they were there because of the rock concert aspect of this. It was like they were Motley Crue folks who had reached their 60s or 70s, and they were just going to party and have fun. They weren't really into, politics, or the way the woman said it is a little bit different. But and there was also, her friend was also willing to talk a little bit of substance, both about Donald Trump and Ron DeSantis and Dr. Oz in Pennsylvania. Watch this.
If Donald Trump doesn't run, you like DeSantis?
I love DeSantis.
How come? What about DeSantis?
He cares about us. First thing that's most important is our country, not sending money to other countries.
He sent those migrants from Texas to Martha's Vineyard.
I loved it. I've been there.
You've been to Martha's Vineyard?
Yes, I have.
It's a nice place to go.
Yes, it is. And I wish they had stayed there, because it's a sanctuary city and they're supposed to welcome everybody.
There's some other folks that Donald Trump has been supporting, like Dr. Oz in Pennsylvania.
I love Dr. Oz.
How come he's doing so badly?
I don't know why. He's got that, Fetterman, whatever his name is.
Yeah, John Fetterman.
Oh my God, he doesn't have a brain cell in his head.
Dr. Oz, is he even from Pennsylvania? I thought he was from New Jersey.
I'm not sure where he's from, but I never really liked him until he ran. Yeah. And Trump endorsed him. Yeah. That's the only reason I like him now.
I love Dr. Oz, but I never really liked him until Donald Trump endorsed him and he ran. And that's the sort of logic. Donald Trump was the key to all this. And by the way, there was a little bit more flirting from that woman's friend. Watch.
There's the most difficult question of all. What was Donald Trump wanting to do with those documents at Mar-a-Lago?
Donald Trump didn't know he had done anything wrong. I love him, though.
Is he married?
But we love him, though.
Donald Trump is married, as far as we know.
Oh, I love him. I think Melania's great.
Are you married?
I am, thank you, but I am flattered. Thank you. Thank you so much. You guys enjoy the rally today. What have you been drinking? Have you been drinking anything today?
I hadn't drank in 3 years.
Good for you. Congratulations.
Yeah. Until today.
Hello, everybody.
Love you, David.
Love you guys. Take care. Have fun.
I will confess, they were friendly. They were having a great time. They were smiling. I didn't feel threatened physically, romantically, or anything like that. I just thought, okay, they're having a good time. And Cenk, maybe that's the thing that occasionally can cut through, that we can all sort of show our humanity and flirt with each other a little bit and smile and laugh and joke about ourselves. I have not had something like that happen, I don't know, in at least 30 years. So, and my friends are like, well, it's because they were tanks. So, of course.
Listen, I'd take it. It hasn't happened to me in 30 years either. You can be drunk, high, etc. It's flattering, it's nice. But there's a whole bunch of actually real lessons in there. But before we even get to the real lessons, but my favorite line, "Don't bury the lead," was "until today." I kind of feel bad,
I haven't
but it was
anything for 3 years. Until today, and her timing was perfect. If I was like a reality TV crew, I'd put a camera on her and follow her around. She was a hoot.
Oh, 100%. It was like out of a movie. She paused until today. Okay, so now look, one of the, small real point here. She's like, oh, I don't like people sending money to other countries. If you told her, well, Trump sent a lot of money to Israel, she'd be like, God damn right, we got to send money to other countries. Okay. So it is what it is. What am I gonna do? But the most important part there, and of course you can't over extrapolate from one anecdote, but I think it is telling. If Trump endorses someone, then they like him. Before then, they don't care. So who's gonna win between Trump and DeSantis? Well, if there's a real primary fight, DeSantis only exists because Trump endorsed him. Yes, now among Republican leaders and Republican thought leaders, there's a lot of love for DeSantis. But at the grassroots level, if he fights Trump, I think that the real love is for their prophet, Donald Trump, and that it might not wind up well for DeSantis. So what do you think about that?
I think you're absolutely right. Look, these are people who they see Donald Trump as far more charismatic. People describe this as, again, this is entertaining to them. They see Donald Trump as entertaining. He makes them laugh and giggle, and they have a great time. DeSantis they like because they see him as serious, but they don't see DeSantis as having that same sort of charisma. And a couple of them have said that DeSantis can come across with a little bit of a sort of a prickly personality. So I think you're absolutely right. If Donald Trump wins, I don't think he really has much to worry about Ron DeSantis. And so we'll see.
Yeah, and last thing that is a kind of a serious point on that video is that look at how well we get along if we just don't talk about politics, right? So if you and I went out drinking with those women, right? I bet we'd have a great time. And I, of course, I just mean like joking around and talking about each other's lives, et cetera, et cetera. They don't look, do they look evil to you? They're not evil, right? They're not necessarily bad guys. Do they have some opinions that might surprise you and disappoint you? Of course, I know. And some of our opinions would disappoint them. But the media in this country, unfortunately, has poisoned the well. So yes, right-wing media told all of them all these different lies that they now 100% believe. And it's nearly impossible to undo it. But as I say often, corporate media started in the first place by telling you these lies about how politicians are fantastic, the status quo is great, your job at Walmart for $8.25 is the best you can do, the rich deserve all the money because it's a meritocracy, you deserve nothing, if you ever get higher wages, you cause inflation, et cetera, et cetera. And they got sick of those lies. And what it did was it created a rift that where people who would normally get along, fellow Americans, now hate each other. Thanks for listening to the full episode of The Young Turks. Support our work, listen ad-free, access members-only bonus content, and more by subscribing to Apple Podcasts at apple.co/TYT. I'm your host, Cenk Uygur, and I'll see you soon.